As Director of Community Relationship Building at Bons Secours St. Francis, Maxim Williams leverages relationships and economics to build healthier communities. Ladies and gentlemen, Maxim Williams.
All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Maxim, and my talk will be about how much I hate the Golden Rule and how somehow that relates to building healthy communities. Trust me. What you're about to hear may not be what you expect to hear about a talk that relates to health and healthcare and healthy communities. And if you're like me and have been paying attention to the political theater lately as it relates to healthcare in the last year, the last couple of years, since the 90s really, you may have noticed things missing from the conversation, things missing from the debate, things that have gone undiscussed that are very important before we come to a solution on health and healthy communities and healthcare. But before I get into those things, I'll share quickly just a little bit about myself. I was born and raised in Toronto, Canada. Hold your applause. Thank you. Born to Jamaican-born immigrants. I've spent some time in Florida, the mountains of eastern Tennessee, sunny San Diego, California, some time in Australia, the Dominican Republic, Mexico. I've done a lot of traveling in my short time on this planet. And through those travels, I've experienced different cultures, different ways of living, different lifestyles, and different concepts of what is healthy. I've been a community organizer. I've been a consultant to the rich. I've been an advocate for the poor. And I've seen different ways of looking at the world that kind of influence how I go through the process of building healthy communities. And I bring all of that up because I think it's important, and I think it goes unasked, the question of who are you in a lot of our discussions as it relates to health. Who are you? Who am I as a black person in America? Who am I as an immigrant in this country? Who am I as a Christian, as a Catholic? Who are you as a Muslim or as a woman, as a married person, as a straight person, as a gay person? What is your worldview, your identity, and how does that influence how you see the world and how you behave in the world? It's very important. What does it mean to say that you're colorblind or that you treat everyone the same, the golden rule, that you don't see race? That really ticks me off, actually. What if I want you to see my color? What if it's important to me? What if I value and appreciate my culture and I want you to do the same? What if I need you to understand my language? What are you missing by not seeing who I am, not understanding the difference that I bring to the table? How am I supposed to trust you if you don't understand me? Very important in the discussion when we talk about health and healthy communities and healthcare, and it goes undiscussed. Also is important for us to figure out, well, what is healthy? What does healthy look like? When we talk about a healthy vision for our communities, for our towns, our cities, our neighborhoods, how do we get consensus on that? If I were to ask this entire room to close their eyes and think of images that come into your mind when I say healthy community, what would you think of? What would be included? Who would be the people that look healthy? And where do those images come from? Who's sending those messages? Who's included and who's excluded? We also don't ask the question, well, really, why are people unhealthy in the first place? Why are communities broken and need to be built into healthier places? Some of you in this room may believe that it's all about choice, that people choose to be unhealthy. They choose to be poor, they choose to be homeless, they choose to eat those fatty foods, thereby they choose to be unhealthy. Some of you may believe it's purely clinical and medical. Something about their DNA, their genetics, makes them predisposed to certain conditions and diseases. So thereby they must take this pill every day, twice a day for the rest of their life and have a Coke and a smile and be on their way. Others believe people are good and evil inherently, and that dictates their destiny. Maybe it's some of those things, maybe it's none of those things. And I'm not here to tell any one of you that you're wrong. I'm here to tell you that it tends to be a lot deeper than that, a lot more complicated than our own perspective. Living in a lot of different places around the country and visiting a lot of different places around the world, I can tell you that we underestimate the power of the environment, the power of our systems and our structures and our designs that influence our behavior visibly and invisibly. Working for a hospital system here in town in Greenville, South Carolina, my mission is to build healthy communities. My competitor is not the competing hospital up the street. My competitor is fast food. My competitor is neighborhood infrastructure that goes back 100 years. My competitor is poverty, gentrification. Those are the things that are keeping some of our patients and our neighborhood populations from being healthy. There are neighborhoods just a mile or two from this facility that are in third world conditions without an earthquake because of poor neighborhood infrastructure, because of lack of access to resources. How am I, as a healthcare professional, and my colleagues, doctors, nurses, volunteers, administrators, educating folks on how to manage their diabetes through fresh fruits and vegetables, exercise, yet in their neighborhood, there is no grocery store. There is nothing fresh and healthy. It's not safe to exercise. It's not safe to go out at night because of crime, because of vacancy, because of blight. There are no jobs. How is it their fault? Just 30, 40 years ago, our housing policies, our economic policies, were legally socially unjust. Those were that was in our legal system, that certain groups did not have access to certain resources, were kept from healthier options. Some of those folks are still alive today, and some of those folks have had children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren who've grown up in environments and neighborhoods that have been isolated and disconnected and have no other options but to just survive here in the richest country in the world. So when you hear discussions about cost of healthcare, we spend the most money in this country on healthcare compared to a lot of other countries, yet have the lowest life expectancies in the world. So cost is not the only reason why our healthcare system is broken. Economics is important, but what I propose today is that relationships are equally, if not more important. Social justice, things like racism, homophobia, sexism, those are relationship problems. There's a disconnection there that we need to reconcile. We have an illusion of connection through our reliance on technology. Some of you in this room right now may be twittering this TED Talk. And I challenge you, and I'm looking for Trey Pennington, by the way. I challenge you to realize that that is not true connection. That is not a true relationship with the person next to you, your neighbor, your family, those in other communities. It's an illusion of connection. We also have an illusion of inclusion and diversity. But in many organizations, diversity only exists between 9 and 5 or at the diversity banquet. But this country and a lot of countries are segregated on Sundays. We stay in our little bubbles and do not integrate with each other, do not reach out and try to understand each other. That is why the golden rule really ticks me off. How can you treat everyone like you when you do not understand that everyone is not like you, that they want to be appreciated for their differences? And for us to understand what is healthy for another person, we need to understand the reality that some people are living in. In our Western society, we tend to have a very individualistic view, which is fine, which makes, especially the United States, very charming. But at the same token, we fall into hero worship, and we put a lot of pressure on the individual and say, well, if you just work hard enough and make the right choices, you too can be healthy and be successful. Underestimating the environment. The environment can be overwhelmingly predictive of what people do and what people choose to do. I'm reminded of that when I do happen to go to church on Sunday and nobody curses and nobody smokes. Yet I don't see any signs anywhere that say I'm not allowed to do either. Never heard the pastor drop an F-bomb. I'm sure there's one out there. The environment is overwhelmingly predictive of behavior. We need to acknowledge that environment. We need to understand that environment. And we also need to understand who are living in these conditions right here in your own community. But beyond relationships, I'm reminded of a mentor that told me, or either a mentor or a fortune cookie had said this phrase. I eat a lot of Chinese food. There is no romance without finance. I'm sure some of you have heard that before. It's very true. You need to have a balance of both. You can do only so much community organizing, only so much micro-level grassroots organizing with people who live in these communities to try to rebuild and revitalize until there has to be decisions made that involve economics, that involve policy, that involve changes in the system. Our system right now reinforces bad behavior. It reinforces the unhealthy option. It takes a gargantuan amount of effort in some of these neighborhoods just outside of this community to actually make the healthier choice. Instead of just donating and writing a check to the same programs and services and foundations and really not seeing any change in the statistics in terms of disparity, instead of doing that, reach out to these community residents and patient populations and actually try to understand and then figure out how to target your economics and your relationships and your resources. Only then will it be impactful and meaningful, and we'll start to see some movement. But it has to start on the relational level, and then from relationships we leverage our financial and economic resources. Economic policy must also be considered health policy. Otherwise, we'll see no change. I'm reminded oftentimes when I do this work and other people and other colleagues attempt to build healthy communities that we have a reliance on programs and on charity. And I'm not saying that we don't need those things. I'm not saying that we need to stop being charitable and stop trying to make a difference. But I am saying that that's just not enough. I am saying that if money was the answer to all of our problems, I would imagine that we would have solved poverty and healthcare problems 40 years ago when we started spending a lot of money on those things. It's not enough. I'm reminded of a butterfly and a young girl watching the caterpillar go through the transition, struggling to get out of the cocoon. And in her excitement and in her impatience, she tears the cocoon just a little bit to allow the butterfly to be free. Yet the butterfly falls to the floor. In her shock, she picks up the butterfly, hoping that it will fly when she releases it into the air. And of course, it falls again. After a number of attempts, the butterfly keeps falling. It eventually dies in front of her. Yeah. She gets sad, frustrated, and actually angry at the butterfly, thinking, maybe this is a bad butterfly. Maybe this butterfly did not want to fly in the first place. Without realizing that her attempt to weaken the process of empowerment of that butterfly actually made the butterfly weaker and unable to fly, dependent, if not entitled, to receive her help. How many of us do this in some of our communities right now? How many of us fly in like superheroes trying to fix people, try to tell them what's wrong with them, without the process of a relationship and without the process of building their own capacity, looking at their environment and their reality and determining, well, what can I do to protect the process of them becoming stronger and healthier on their own? A lot of us need to be aware of who we are, our experience, our expertise, and then be willing to unlearn what we have learned. If we don't do this, and we'll continue to get what we've always gotten. And I'm going to close with just a few points about what we need to do going forward, what any of you in this room can do today, tomorrow, whenever you're ready, to actually start building those connections that matter. We need to start redefining certain words in our vocabulary, expanding certain definitions of the words friend, family, and community. We need to reach out to those that speak a different language, both metaphorically and literally. You need to be able to hold multiple perspectives, get into a relationship with people who are different, and feel that frustration. How many of you are in a relationship right now, a marriage, a significant other, where you're in love, but sometimes they get on your last damn nerve? You need to be patient through that frustration and that conflict, because through that, you experience growth and an understanding and appreciation of that difference, and they become appreciative of your intention to help them. Until we're ready to cross those boundaries and expand those definitions, we'll consistently be locked in a world that we have right now that is us versus them, black versus white, rich versus poor, me versus we. Thank you.